Matilda. So thank you, Matilda. Away we go.
Thanks, Anna. Hi everyone. Welcome to Destination Spain. Um, so Spain is the UK's number one destination for us to go on holiday, and most of the time we will fly there, but that actually isn't any need to fly. So we're going to hear from a number of speakers who have travelled to Spain without flying, including Cardiff to Bilbao, Glasgow to Mallorca, Lancashire to La Linea, Middlesbrough to Barcelona, and London to Malaga. And then we will hear from journalist Graham Keeley, as you can see, our travel expert who lives in Madrid, I believe. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And then you'll have a chance to ask him your questions about your own Spain trips. But also, if you hear anything that you want to ask about in any of the stories we're about to hear, then please ask about them. As Anna said, please use the chat box to ask your own questions. But also, if anyone has any answers, feel free to reply in the chat box. And yeah, share your stories of your own travels to Spain if you would like to. So we're going to kick things off with Bryony, who is currently actually on a train at the moment. So she actually sent us a lovely video because she was going to be on the train, but we're having some technical difficulties with the audio. So we're going to ask if she can to explain her trip from Cardiff to San Sebastian.
Hi Matilda, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, sorry everyone about the video. I'm gonna have to wing it now and hope that it's all right. But hopefully I can remember what I recorded. Yeah, so last September I went on holiday to northern Spain. Um, Basically I wanted to go because it was an area that I hadn't really been to at all before. I've been to Spain a couple of times, but didn't really know it that well as a country. Um, Obviously, no, it's a really popular destination from the UK. It's so close. It was just somewhere that I wanted to do a bit more exploring. Um, so I kind of planned a bit of an extended holiday, ended up being a bit of a holiday of two halves. So first half, I managed to go with one of my friends, and then she went back halfway through, and then I met up with another friend who was on a longer traveling trip, and then sort of went a bit further west along the coast with them. So the what my actual journey was. So started in Cardiff, got the train to London, which is very easy. I used a Interrail pass, so that meant that my travel on the UK segment, both there and back, was included, which is always fantastic. Got the Eurostar to Paris. And then it was really easy, high speed direct train from Paris down to the south of France, and then basically pop out the station, and then it's about a 50-meter walk to this overground metro, which you, within a few minutes, you're over the border into Spain. So that was all the sort of train travel section. So very easy to get to San Sebastian. On the way there, we did actually stay in Paris overnight, but you can do it in a day, and I pretty much did it in a day on the way back. But between San Sebastian and Bilbao, I actually ended up getting the bus. So there is a train, but it kind of winds its way along the coast bit, which is really nice. But just because I had sort of slightly limited time with my friend, we decided to get the bus instead. So I think that took an hour and a half or something, compared to more than a few hours by train. Um, so yeah, in terms of travel, it was very, very easy. Um, had an absolutely fantastic time. I think things that stood out to me, and one of the reasons why I wanted to go was kind of the food and all the kind of cultural stuff as well. So that whole area, the Basque country of Spain, have this thing called pinchos, which is like their tapas. Um, you basically go into these pinchos bars, and the idea is that you don't sit down and kind of have like a big meal. You sort of go in, have one tapas, one drink, and then you sort of move on to the next place. So it's really cool places. You didn't have to book anywhere. You just sort of hop around. So even though places somewhere's free, it's just go somewhere else back. So I'd really recommend if you're interested in food. It was fantastic for that. And then similar in Bilbao as well. We also went to the Guggenheim, which is the kind of world famous museum there. Incredible place, very cool exhibitions. It was cool architecturally as well. We also got the funicular one day, had some great views, did a bit of a run along the river, and we also did a city tour, which is something that I've done in a few places that I've travelled to and would definitely recommend. It's just a really sort of cheap and easy way to get to know a place within a couple of hours. And then my friend that I was there with, she came down on the train with me. That's not something that she would ever usually do by herself. So I'm really pleased that she did that with me. But then she decided that she wanted to get a flight home. So she left partway through the holiday, and then I met up with my other friend to go a bit further west to the Picos de Europa National Park. Um, and then essentially reversed my journey on the way back. So because I was a bit further west, it just meant that I had to get an additional bus back to Bilbao, but then essentially did the same thing with an overnight stop just by the border before I went back. Um, as I said, all the travel was actually really smooth. I think the only tip I would give in terms of the travel is if you're crossing Paris, have a look at what stations you're going to. So for some of them, like when I've changed between Gare du Nord and Gare de l'Est, they're really easy to get between. It's less than a 10-minute walk, I think, between them. But we had to go to Montparnasse, which I'd not been to before. The station is huge. Even on Google Maps, it was very confusing what entrance to go in. We sort of ended up going in a back way. We were like miles, we wanted to get some food. We were miles away in the station from that. Um, so yeah, I would just recommend if you know it's a big station or somewhere that you haven't been to, give yourself a little bit of extra time. But yeah, nothing went wrong in terms of travel. It's pretty cool being able to get there in a day if you want to. Um, and yeah, it was just an absolutely fantastic trip, and I'd really recommend it as a place to go in Spain. I think particularly that high-speed train down through France just makes it so easy. You're kind of there in Spain before you know it. And I just love being on the double-decker trains. That photo of me is in front of one of them on the double-decker trains in Europe because it just feels every time it feels like a treat. You sort of get to be in this elevated position, kind of watching the landscape go by, getting to experience new places as you're going through them, and watching the landscape change as you're kind of going from the UK to somewhere else. So, yeah, highly recommend Northern Spain and the Basque Country as a destination. Absolutely loved it, and I would definitely go back again. And I think the only other tip I would say is I'd really recommend using the man in seat 61. Some of you on the call might be familiar with him anyway, but he is kind of the go-to or one of the go-to places to look for train travel tips in Europe and more widely as well. And I've used him for 10, getting on for 15 years. He's sort of the font of all my knowledge for train travel. So yeah, had a fantastic time in Spain and would highly recommend that area.
Thank you so much, Bryony. It sounds like such a good trip, and thank you so much for saying it all on the fly. We will send out the video after as well. But yeah, I've been on a double-decker train before, and it is really exciting. It's really fun. Okay, so next we will have Cheyenne, who travelled from Glasgow to Mallorca. This is obviously one of the further destinations in Spain that you can travel to. So Cheyenne is going to tell us all about her journey.
Yeah,
But
thank you,
Matilda, you need to
Matilda.
put the slides on. Sorry.
Oh,
Oh,
that's all
Skip
right.
forward.
yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
technical.
I was so scared
Right.
of playing the video that I didn't do it. There you go.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to tell you about the flight-free journey. So I went from Glasgow in Scotland all the way to Mallorca. I went there to meet my dad, and my dad has some friends who live on Mallorca, so that made it quite handy to just go and visit. And yeah, I guess I also just start with my route. So I took the initial train from Glasgow to London, which is really straightforward. Back then it was about 4.5 hours. Now for some reason it's five, but it's easy. And then once you get to London, similar to Bryony, I took the Eurostar from London to Paris, which is only 2 hours, 20 minutes. So really amazing, really fast. And then from Paris, you actually have a couple of options how you could travel. So I done my route via Barcelona. But what I actually did, so you could take a direct train from Paris to Barcelona, but I actually stopped in Lyon and then changed in Lyon and went from Lyon to Barcelona just because it made it a little bit cheaper at the time. So I would say from from Paris to Barcelona, it's about 2 hour, 7 hours in total. And then I think this is really the part of the journey because you go through the south of France and everything where the vacation feeling already kicks in and it really feels like you're on an adventure because you're passing all of this beautiful scenery, really beautiful landscapes. Remember, especially in the kind of more southern France region, there was this part with beautiful lakes and there were flamingos just everywhere. So it really felt like I was already on vacation, even though I wasn't even fully in Mallorca yet. And yeah, once you get to Barcelona, it's quite simple. You just take the metro right from the station, a few stops to the ferry terminal, and then board the ferry, which is very straightforward. It takes about 7 to 7.5 hours on the ferry. So I would say overall, the journey you have to plan about a day. Obviously, you could break that up a little bit if you want to stop in the city as well. But I think for me, through flight-free traveling, I've really learned to reframe the actual train journey already as part of the vacation and adventure, right? Because we live in kind of such busy lifestyles and busy times. So for me, it's really that moment of entering the train. I'm like, I get to relax now. I just get to daydream. I get to watch out of the window all day. I get to read. I can bring as much food and drinks as I like because unlike an airplane, there's no restrictions. So really, you can make the journey really nice. And obviously these days, all the trains as well had internet, so you could work or you could watch a movie or just maybe bring something creative. I always like to bring my journal and maybe something like a tapestry, or I've seen some other people actually on the train who were knitting. So you definitely get to use the time. Um, I would say overall, I was actually surprised how straightforward it can be. There is, as I said, multiple ways actually to travel to Mallorca. So you could also go from a port in France. You don't actually have to go to Spain. The reason I decided to travel via Barcelona is because on my way back, I stopped in Barcelona for a couple of days and visited a friend who I knew from university who lives there now. And yeah, just had some additional days in Barcelona. So I think that is definitely one of my tips. If you have the time, consider breaking up the journey and spend some time in all these gorgeous places you're already passing, which on a plane you wouldn't have the chance to just exit and kind of hop on, hop off. In terms of the ferry, you could also go to, so I went to Palma, but you could also go to, sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation, Alcudia, which is in the north of Mallorca. Um, but it's a really beautiful journey. So especially if you travel during the day, you can see that a bit in my pictures. It was just endless blue ocean or sea. And yeah, you can spend the time on deck. Definitely use sunscreen because you will tan. You don't feel it with the wind, but it's happening. And they have a great food court on the ferry. Even for me as a vegan, I actually found some food. Children play area. You can charge your devices. They do have sleeping cabins, which you can book in advance if you go for a night travel. But I just didn't do that to keep it a bit cheaper. And I think in general, the ferry, I found it decently affordable. I think I paid £69 for the round trip, so back and forth for the ferry, which was for 7.5 hours, pretty nice, and they really do have everything you need. I guess I want to say one thing I found a bit challenging about the ferry was just when I was on deck in my utter bliss, they do have this bit of the chimney where you can see some of the smoke coming out of the ferry. So it did make me aware that I guess a ferry still causes pollution, right? But on the contrary, when we're on an airplane, we sit in this bubble and we don't see how much emissions and how much pollution we cause. So actually for me, while I found it a bit difficult to see that, it really put me in touch that flight-free traveling is still so much more environmentally friendly. And yeah, it causes some pollution, but it's doing, I guess, less than the plane. So it would definitely be my choice again. Um, On Mallorca itself, I don't know who of you has been, but for me, I think it's certainly a visit. It was a completely underrated island for me. I always think of the party scene and everything, but actually has such a beautiful nature. So I went snorkeling a lot. There's basically beaches everywhere. You can just really walk into the water. It's this pristine turquoise see-through water. There's amazing caves, and especially in the kind of northern area, they have a lot of hills as well. So you can actually go hiking. I've seen a lot of cyclists. So you have a really good mix of nature, which I wasn't really aware of before. And then also super cute villages. It's just such a relaxed culture. Everyone goes for ice cream and just sits there all day and eats a little bit to what Bryony was also sharing about the food culture. So, yeah, definitely worth it, I would say. I guess in terms of the overall cost, my trip was not super cheap for some reasons. So I paid around maybe 400 to 450 pounds in total. I do think the money is worth it because A, it helps the planet compared to a flight, and B, you get to experience so many places before you actually get there. I think in order to make it a bit cheaper, what I would recommend is if you can go during the week. I went on weekend days, which is a lot more expensive. I just had to line it up with my dad's travel plans and just my work. So midweek would be cheaper. And then also the Eurostar was actually the most expensive part of the trip. So if you have flexibility in terms of your dates, I recommend keeping an eye out on their flash sales because my tickets were over £100 for the shortest train distance, but on the flash sales, you can get them sometimes for £39 or around that budget. So, yeah, that's just one way to bring it down. And then finally, as well, on my return from Barcelona to Paris, I actually took the Flixbus night bus, and that massively brought down the cost again. So it was £31 for the bus. Takes about double the time, and you don't see as much if you go overnight, but I slept all the way through. And yeah, it's just amazing to wake up in a different city. Um, yeah, I could say a lot more, but I think I'll pass to the next speaker and just keep the rest for any questions later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheyenne. The flamingos sound amazing. I can't believe you saw them on the way. Next up, we have Olga. Her trip from Lancashire to southern Spain was to visit family, which obviously differs from the rest of our speakers who were traveling for holidays. Please take it away, Olga.
Thank you. Yeah, so much of what I was going to say has been covered because it's so great that we're discovering similar things. The flamingos are really astounding. The first journey I did, flight free to Spain, it was now sort of 5 years ago, and it felt like this enormous experiment. And I did, I went one way by train and flew back. And then once I'd done it, I thought, oh, this is so easy. So I do this twice, 3 times a year, flight free now. And I've done so many different variations of this with going through Cordoba, going through Malaga, going through Marseille, going through San Sebastian. It's just unbelievable how rich an experience it can be to travel in this way. I am Spanish. I know I do a very good impersonation of British people, but I have I have a Spanish passport. I am a Spanish citizen, and I've lived, as is obvious, most of my life in the UK. So I've travelled a lot in order to go backwards and forwards, especially when I was a child living here with my parents. And when I realised that I could do it, I'm also an environmentalist. I was only 2 weeks ago, I was elected as a Green Party councillor. So when I realised I could do this flight free, it was such a kind of life moment to realize it was doable. And I'd come across the flight free movement, etc. So the first time I did it, here's the route on screen, getting to London, often the most complicated and often the most expensive bit of it, getting to St Pancras. I agree the Eurostar is often the expensive part too. And once you're in Paris, then you can either go towards either side of the French border. That time I went along that train from Paris to Barcelona, which is the longest, the smoothest, most amazing ride. And sometimes from Paris, I've done the overnight to Marseille, that's this summer, or to Perpignan, and that sort of speeds things up if you're traveling via the night trains. They're not as great as um, they're not as modern as smooth as the day trains. And this time I went Barcelona to Malaga, but sometimes I've gone through to Madrid and then done some of the local trains from Madrid to Cordoba or to Antequera and then get some of the local trains. Buses are often much more direct in Spain, and certainly some of the local trains are very windy, very beautiful for scenery. So this journey took me a couple of days, and this was me when I arrived. Linea is the village where I was born, which is right on the border with Gibraltar. So this is me euphoric in excitement, having done almost 2,000 miles flight free, and as I say, can't get over it, and I still do it. Um, if you were doing night trains, you could even do it in 24 hours if you so wished. But actually, as many people have said, you end up spending time stopping off. So, over the years, I've stopped off in Barcelona a lot, and it's lovely to do an evening walk and have supper. I've done the same in Madrid or in Paris. I've done lunch in Perpignan. I've stopped off for a few days in the Basque Country or in Marseille. And the important thing is that you make time. I think when I first started, the idea that I could take 2 or 3 days, or sometimes even a week, to get down to yeah, so I have done the train for the French Spanish border, and it's a slightly older train. I'm doing the Paris Marseille one this summer, and I've normally done the Paris Perpignan one. Yeah, perfectly good train, and often slightly cheaper than night trains, which also helps cut down the costs. It is a slow form of travel. Once I got my head around making time and making 2 days, 3 days, perhaps even sometimes like a best part of a week, I'm spending time with other people. But the thing is, it is so much more relaxing. You know, airplane, airports are quite stressful places. Train stations aren't, and you have time, as somebody, as Cheyenne was saying before, the nervous system just so enjoys being the slower travel. So it is, and also you get there and you're fresh because you've been living in real time as opposed to the accelerated time at the flight. One thing that this form of travel has really given me is, rekindling friendships of people who live along the way, who, if I flew, I would just fly over. I've seen family who live through France and Spain. I've seen exhibitions in random towns. It's just so much more interesting to, sometimes the trains, you've got a couple of hours here, so you just want to go for a wander in Cordoba and have a lunch and then get back on the train. So I could make it work for about £300 if I plan it way in advance. Top tips always from Man in Seat 61. Trainline is actually very good for sort of thinking through different journeys as well. If you start breaking up the journey, obviously that the train sometimes costs that little bit more. And in time, I've got to know sort of hotels in Paris and Madrid and Barcelona that are also have major sustainability commitments. So it's just great to sort of know that I'm living environmentally wherever I go. What I've noticed with Trainline is sometimes the turnaround, the times between trains is really tight. European trains are brilliantly punctual, so actually that's quite low risk. But over the last few years, they've got less punctual. So if I opt for longer and sometimes pay the difference. But with Trainline, you can play with different routes. Sometimes breaking up the journey brings down costs. You can add in a bus in certain areas. And so that's a really good place to plan and to start seeing what's doable. A major thing is, lots of cities in Europe have quite separate railway stations. So actually playing with that factor is an important part. I tend to leave quite a lot of space now between my trains, just in case something gets delayed. But there was a time last summer that the train that I was on from Barcelona to Madrid, the famous one that is so smooth and elegant and has double deckers, was just cancelled there and then. So I ended up, instead of 2 nights in Paris, spending 2 nights at Figueres and going to the Dali Museum. And that kind of allowing life to just see what happens is a wonderful gift of this kind of travel. So yeah, I think that's that the thing about connecting trains and getting to know the different stations, thinking through how you're traveling, and the playing with routes to bring down the costs, because it is the case that this costs more financially than some of the kind of bargain things you see for flights, but all of that is part of an economy that, I'm very keen to disinvest from. So actually thinking in terms of the value of the travel and the value of travel that is largely electric these days and very sustainable is makes it all very, very much worth it. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga. Yeah, that's a really lovely sentiment. And thank you for the tip on Trainline. I know a lot of people use it for UK trains, but wouldn't necessarily know that you can use it abroad and so effectively.
Yeah, you can post in the whole journey and then start planning different ways. So it's really quite
Yeah,
helpful.
that's really great. Thank you so much for that. Next, we have Nancy, who travelled from Eagles Cliff near Middlesbrough to Barcelona to attend the Primavera Sound Festival and enjoyed it so much that she's planning to attend again.
Hi everyone. Yeah, I should preface this by saying that obviously I said in the chat that I'm in Bristol. When I went the first time, I was living in the northeast, but I have relocated to Bristol now, which is where I'll be traveling from this year. So I went to Barcelona because one of my best friends in the picture there lives in Madrid, and he's been to Primavera Sound many times, and the lineup was so good last year that I decided that I was going to go with them. And I had taken the flight free pledge last year, so I was doing the journey all by train. I'll take you through it quickly. So Eagles Cliff to London, pretty simple. There's a direct-ish train. There's very few stops that goes between the northeast and London called the Grand Central. It takes about just over 2 hours to get from the stop that I got on at Eagles Cliff to London. So that was easy. And that gets into King's Cross Station, which is right next to St Pancras, which is obviously where the Eurostar goes from. I don't know if I just booked super in advance and so was taking advantage of sort of like early prices, but my Eurostar tickets were around £40 to £50 each. So I think I got them at a decent price. And the outward journey was on a Wednesday and the back journey was on a Tuesday, I believe. So that might have helped as well. So yeah, the Eurostar isn't always over £100. It can be cheaper, even if it's not a flash sale, if you're just sort of all over it. And I was a bit anxious about getting things booked and lining up the schedule for all my changes last year. So I was pretty on it. Yeah, and that got me into Paris, Gare du Nord. That is big central station. But the train that I was getting on the way to Toulouse was the night train, as I mentioned in the chat, which goes from a station called Austerlitz, which is south of the river in Paris. I had never been to that one before, despite having lived in France for a year and been to Paris many, many times. But it is very easy to get to on the metro. I think there was one change, but overall it was like 2 stops on one line, 1 stop on another. So very swift. So swift, in fact, that I had time for dinner and a beer whilst waiting for the night train. The night train was probably the most exciting part of it for me. I'd never been on a night train before. Yeah, I was just really excited to see what it was all about, what the beds were like, how many people were on it, how long it was going to take, whether I was going to sleep, which I did, fortunately. It was really pretty comfortable, even though they're very small cabins and there can be up to 6 people sleeping in 3-decker bunks, if you can believe it. I don't know, maybe like the vibrations of the train moving through the country just rock you to sleep. And I woke up once at 6 o'clock and I was like, oh my God, we're almost there. So that was to Toulouse. Yeah, as some people have mentioned, there are many ways that you can get between Paris and Barcelona. There's direct trains. Because I was coming from the UK and I was having to get a Eurostar before, that would have meant a very, very early Eurostar, should I have done that. And also the direct trains are quite a lot more expensive. So that's why I chose the night train. And it gives you a bed for the night. So it's basically a train and a hotel all rolled into one. And then there was a couple of connecting trains, so Toulouse to Narbonne, Narbonne to Barcelona. And then I was there. Yeah. And I stayed there for the duration of the festival, which was 3 days. And then I decided to stick around as well for a couple of days afterwards, because it had been a while since I've been to Barcelona, and do some exploring by myself. I went to the Juan Miró Museum. I went to a couple of other art galleries, took some pictures of all the Gaudi buildings. There's a very famous one in the centre of Barcelona, and then obviously there's the Sagrada Familia, which I'd seen before, but I went to check on progress. It's still not finished. I don't know if it will be in any of our lifetimes. And then I travelled back basically the same way, except for, and this was the biggest challenge, I decided that I was going to get a Flixbus from Barcelona to Paris, because as mentioned by Shane, I think it does bring the cost down quite significantly. And I think it was about €40 to go the whole way, which is immensely good value for the distance covered. But I think it's something to consider, how good a sleeper you are in an upright position, and also when surrounded by other people sort of moving around and making noise. For me, that was quite difficult. It wasn't very comfortable, and we had some big delays getting into Paris. There's obviously a lot of traffic. It's a capital city. So I ended up having to sprint from Orly, I think it stopped at the airport, and then I had to try and get the underground all the way back to Gare du Nord for my Eurostar. I genuinely thought I wasn't going to make it. I was extremely stressful, but I did. So even when things go wrong, you can make it, but I wouldn't. Yeah, I would just try and plan some decent gaps between transfers in order that you don't have to go through that stress. Yeah, I enjoyed that so much that I'm doing the exact same route this year. But I'm coming from Bristol, so a slightly faster journey in the UK. And I'm taking the night train back from Toulouse to Paris. So that'll be more fun and comfortable for me. In terms of cost, I think it was around £300 in total. It might have been a little bit less because I might not have converted some of the cost from euros to pounds in my head. And I just looked at the cost of a flight if I was booking it now to go this year. And if you wanted to go at a reasonable time of day in order that you would get there in time for the festival, you're looking at, and with one piece of luggage, which obviously you can take as much luggage as you want within reason on a train, you're looking at £350 to £400. Obviously booking it now will be a bit last minute. You might be able to get the flights cheaper in advance, but just to give a bit of an idea of comparison. I think it was a little bit cheaper this year because I'm coming from Bristol. But yeah, definitely well worth it. I think on a just closing note, I think we do feel a bit entitled in this day and age that we should be able to get places quickly and also be able to get there cheaply, but actually travel takes a lot of time. And I think that traveling overland really puts that into realistic perspective. And that's how long it should take, in my opinion. And that's why I'm willing to do it again and again.
Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, that gradual change can be really amazing when you see one place change from one to the other. I definitely enjoy the slow way. We now have Anna, our director, who is going to share her trip through Spain to Malaga, stopping at a few places on the way.
Thanks, Matilda. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I think I'm the only one who starts my journey in London, which does actually make things a bit easier for me in terms of getting an early Eurostar so I can get comfortably all the way to Barcelona in one day. And I also have the luxury of kind of getting one of the cheaper Eurostars, although for this trip I used Interrail, which meant that in total our holiday all the way to Malaga and back cost £365. So that was for the Interrail pass and also for all the seat reservations that you have to get when you travel by Interrail. So this the Eurostar and the TGV from Paris and the high-speed trains in Spain, they all require an extra cost on top of your Interrail pass, and you have to book the seats for them. So it's a little bit, it's not quite as straightforward as just buying your pass and jumping on a train. But I have found Interrail such a good way to keep the cost down, and in total, and it does allow you to have a bit of flexibility if plans change at the last minute. So actually on this trip we had intended to go to Valencia, but we ended up just going to Madrid instead. So yeah, there are a few different things that a few different advantages to travelling by Interrail. But just to kind of illustrate our route, so you can get from London to Barcelona in a single day, which is really, that's amazing, right? I know we've kind of, obviously it takes longer than flying, but everybody said it's so easy, and Barcelona is a really long way away. You have to cross an entire other country, a whole country of France to get there. So to be able to do that in a single day really is remarkable. So yeah, leaving the UK, London at 9:30 or so, whatever it was in the morning, and having a really lovely change across Paris. So what we did, we had just over an hour to get from Gare du Nord to Gare de Lyon, which is the other side of Paris. You can go by metro, it's just 2 stops, or you can walk. So we walked, it took an hour. And we walked, we had just enough time. We kind of had to run at the end. We were slightly too leisurely. But there is a canal that connects the Gare du Nord to the Gare de Lyon, pretty much all the way. So we took the opportunity of really enjoying a lovely Parisian morning, and it was cool and nice weather. And we grabbed a baguette on the way and ate that as we walked. And it was a different way to cross Paris, and a really enjoyable one. Just a backpack each, so that helps. Nothing more cumbersome than that. So once we'd got to Gare de Lyon, it was just a single train all the way down to Barcelona. And this is my first time in Spain, my first time in Barcelona, and we arrived at something like 9:30 p.m. And that's when Barcelona people go out for dinner. So we were right in time for dinner. So yeah, we went out to Las Ramblas, and that's near where our hotel was, and had a great time. And as other people have said, travelling this way means you can visit other places. So going through Barcelona, we chose to stay there for 2 nights, because why not? So we had a whole day having wonderful sightseeing and beach time and bike time and all the Gaudi architecture time. And yeah, they did say they would have finished the Sagrada Familia by this year, but as Nancy said, that is not happening. It's always just, we'll have finished it by next week. So yeah, then after a couple of nights, it was on to the next leg to Madrid. And in fact, you can get all the way from Barcelona to Malaga in a single jump as well. There's a single train that goes all the way, but again we decided to slow it down a little bit, have a short journey to Madrid and 1 night in Madrid and a bit of time to explore that city, and then the final leg was down to Malaga, and we had 3 nights there. So I think I had a image of what Malaga would be like, because my friends from school would go there partying, but yeah, you know, any destination is what you make of it. This was in October last year, so I think party season was over. But also, it's just such a beautiful city, as many of the places are in Spain, and lots of history and lots of wonderful buildings. And even in October, it was 30 degrees, so really warm. And it was just lovely to be there, right by the sea. Obviously, love the Mediterranean. And then coming back, because we had bought a 5-day Interrail pass, so we'd used up 3 days getting down to Malaga, but on the way back it was a bit more swift. So a single day from Malaga all the way to Girona, and that was a change in Barcelona. So a single train all the way from Malaga to Barcelona, then a little local train to Girona. And so going by train is slower than flying, but going by train is still quite fast. Going from the south of Spain all the way to the north of Spain in 1 day, it was really remarkable how much the weather changed, because it was 30 degrees when we left Malaga, and by the time we got to Girona we were really jacketing up, you know. So it was definitely a different climate. So yeah, even by train you're still covering vast distances. And then the following day it was Girona back to Paris, and then Eurostar to London. And we actually missed our Eurostar because there was a trackside fire, I think. And we sat outside Paris on our TGV for about an hour, just watching the time tick and thinking, oh my God, we're going to miss the Eurostar, especially because we then had to get from Gare de Lyon back to Gare du Nord. We ran down to the metro was delayed. We ran up to the departures lounge in Gare du Nord, and the train hadn't actually left yet, but the gate had closed, and they're strict about that, and they said, no, you can't get on, just join that queue and we'll put you on the next train. And they did. We just said, our train was delayed, here is a photograph of the delayed board, but they could see they could look it up anyway, and they said, fine, here are your new tickets. And we got on the next Eurostar and got home an hour later, no bother at all. So that was a real bonus and very reassuring that we could do that. So yeah, I mean, so many more things to say, but that's kind of the summary of the journey. And isn't it amazing that we can still go to these destinations without flying? And yeah, I hope that that's kind of given a bit of an illustration of how to do it.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, that sounds like a lovely trip, and great tip on if you miss your train, they'll let you get on the next one, because I wouldn't necessarily consider that they would, but good to have proof. Okay, next up we've got journalist Graham Keeley, who's our expert speaker living in Spain, who's going to offer some advice on traveling around Spain. So Graham, if you could introduce yourself and give people some background, and then we will move on to the Q&A with you.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Graham Keeley. I'm a British journalist based in Spain. I've been here about 20 years and write for various British newspapers, Times, Independent, Telegraph, Mail, you name it. Anyway, I've really enjoyed listening to these lovely stories of traveling on trains down to Spain. My experience, I have to say, is a bit different. Obviously, I travel quite a lot for my job, and it's really a question of getting from A to B as soon as possible. So it's really nice to hear your leisurely journeys. My journeys involve often making the 10 to 6 train, say from Madrid to Barcelona or something like that, just so that I can be on the first train of the day and make it to start the day and get going. Nevertheless, I would still thoroughly recommend it to everyone for various reasons. I used to get planes around Spain as much as possible. Why? Because they were quick. However, I found that very often the plane service wasn't very good. Planes would be cancelled at the last minute. You'd be left in airports late at night, and it really wasn't working. So I thought, listen, what am I doing? I'm going to try the train to get around within reason. Obviously, Spain is an enormous country, and if you need to get somewhere quick, maybe it's not always the best option. But however, it also allows you the luxury for me of being able to work, get the internet, sit there, write stories, and there's not time lost waiting in airports, sitting on planes for an hour and being out of touch, not being able to look at my phone. I know nowadays that you can hook up to Wi-Fi on some flights, but it's not quite the same as being able to arrive at a train station half an hour before the train leaves, get on, hook up to the internet, and then start working if you can. However, that said, at the same time, if you're on a 6 a.m. Train somewhere, I usually basically fall asleep straight away, despite my best intentions. A bit of background on the trains in Spain, if you don't know it already. This present government has made a great effort to try and promote sustainable travel. That's involved subsidizing to a great degree the state rail service Renfe, also liberalizing the railway service so that two other private companies have come in, Ouigo and Io from Italy. This, of course, has introduced competition and brought down the prices within Spain. That's been great for people, and figures have shown that more people are taking trains because of it. In fact, more people are taking trains than planes for various reasons, perhaps environmental reasons as well. These trains are often high-speed trains, and they'll get you, say from Barcelona to Madrid in about 3 hours now. The trains have slowed down since a serious accident in Cordoba earlier this year. Basically, they are checking every single kilometer of train line to make sure there's no problems. But that should that should change later in the year. So anyway, for the consumer to get around Spain, to see parts of Spain you perhaps never would see, like for instance, northern Spain, western Spain, places like Extremadura in the far west. It gives you the chance to do this at a reasonable price. So I found that a great advantage, and I would recommend it. I wouldn't say the kind of internal trains, or local trains are such good bet. Often there's problems with delays, but certainly the intercity trains and especially the high-speed trains are comfortable, reasonable. And actually talking about cost, I would say a few tips. I tend to look for trains to go early in the day for two reasons, really. One, to get there on time, but secondly, often you can get good bargains. One other thing to mention is if you have a family with more than 3 children, you can apply for a big family discount. But you do have to be a resident in Spain to qualify for that. That leaves you a discount of about 15%. I do that all the time, and it actually makes buying tickets with Renfe cheaper than the commercial or the private train operators. And also, I would say Renfe operate more trains, so they give you more options for routes. So though their tickets at first sight seem more expensive, often they're not, because then they can give you a late night train or the last train of the day, whereas the private operations may have packed up and gone home before that. I think that's all I want to say for now.
Thanks, Graham. That's all really, really good advice. So now we will move on to the Q&A. So if people want to put messages in the text box, that would be great, and you can ask them to Graham. Or if you have any specific questions about any of the journeys we've heard, please just pop them in there.
It looks like someone was asking about that continuity thing. So should we go with that first? I don't know if Graham has any insight here, because I mentioned that I missed my Eurostar and then Eurostar put me on the next train. So Graham, someone's asking if that happens in general with other train companies as well. How much do you know about that if you miss your connection?
I'll be honest, I don't think I know that much. My trains are very much, a city to a city or a city to a town. I'm not planning long journeys around Spain. Honestly, I don't travel for leisure on trains. Perhaps I should, but I do enough traveling on trains just for work. So often I wouldn't really be able to answer that question properly. Sorry.
We've got another question here that says, is there a way of getting a boat to Malaga?
Hang on a second. I think Olga might have an answer to that. Is that why you've got your hand up, Olga?
Please,
Yeah.
Olga.
Yes, it's not my experience in Spain that that they will arrange because there are several different companies. So the Eurostar seems to be particularly good at kind of reading what the delays have been. But all French trains and all Spanish trains will offer, the kind of compensation if you're delayed. So it is the case that sometimes I've had to buy another ticket because it's the train I wanted to get is long gone. But you get compensated often if it's a very long delay for the full amount. I mean, that's one of the reasons I've started leaving longer gaps between trains, just in case. But sometimes I've left little. I mean, sometimes I've had to go down for a family emergency and I've left little or no time, and I just have to chance it. So they're very good at compensation. That's the usual sort of situation if trains in Spain are delayed.
Thanks, Olga. That's really helpful. Cheyenne, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I know a lot because I haven't done this trip so many times, but I did once on another trip from Glasgow to Barcelona. I've done pretty much the same route going Paris, Lyon, Barcelona, and I missed when I got to Lyon. Basically, I was so delayed because of an issue on the train that I missed my connection to Barcelona, and there was no more trains on the day. And what's it called now? TGV, the company, it did take a bit of arguing and really kind of standing firm, but they did ultimately pay for a hotel for me that night and also for some other passengers who missed their connection train because it was an issue with the train. You just have to be a bit persistent. I guess one thing that, and I don't know if this is the case all the time, but they were a bit reluctant for, yeah, like they gave me a little compensation, but they didn't refund my full ticket. And their argument at the time was because I booked through Trainline rather than with them directly. So I think this was my experience with some train providers across Europe. Sometimes they try to say, oh, we only refund it if you book it with our provider rather than through a third party. But then sometimes Trainline is very helpful as well in helping you with compensation. So it's just a matter of, yeah, how much effort you want to put in terms of booking everything separately. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good to know. Thank you, Cheyenne. Yes, going back to Emma's question of is there a way of getting a boat to Malaga? Does anyone have an answer for her?
I would say, unless it's a yacht, no. I don't know if the Spain residents know that, but yeah, Malaga by train is easy, but I don't remember seeing a connection by sea. There is a beautiful big port there, and there are plenty of boats in the port, but that's more private rather than publicly available boats. If anyone wants to correct me on that one, go ahead.
No, it seems not.
Although one thing that we haven't spoken about, which we could do, no, none of our, all of our all of our stories have been by train mainly, and a bit of bus. So you can get to Spain entirely by ferry by going across from Portsmouth to Santander or Bilbao. So if anyone on the call has done that, it would be great to hear your experience because it's a slow version. It takes much longer than coming down by train, but there are many reasons that you might choose to do that. And yeah, it would be interesting to add that story to this conversation if anyone has any insights.
Excuse me, can I just add something about compensation? It's very important if, say, your train is delayed and you're on the train, say it stops or something, take a picture of the time as proof. They'll show the time inside the train, and then you can go to the office afterwards and prove that the train is delayed for an hour or whatever it is, beyond the time they said they would arrive. I've seen lots of people do that on trains.
Thank you, Graham. Yeah, that's a really good point to add, that taking evidence of it. It's helpful to do here, to be honest, when a train's late, because sometimes they really ask rigorously for evidence that it actually was delayed. Our next question, Paul has asked, has anyone done Paris, Spain to central Portugal? I heard it's hard.
Slightly out of the remit, I guess.
A little bit.
Yeah, and
Well,
if you go back to the map on Graham's slide, that shows the international connections, and that there aren't currently any direct trains to Portugal, but that is something that is coming in 2027. They said. Who knows if that's actually going to be the case? But yeah, Olga, you might know more.
I mean, it would be a very long way to do it, but I have got the Flixbus from Sevilla to Lisbon. It was long, but it was perfect. But yeah, it would be a very weird way to get to Lisbon. But I imagine that was my experience of trying to get into Portugal, that the buses from Spain. So I dare say if you a bus from Madrid or a bus from one of the northern towns would be doable if you're going to Portugal.
Thanks so much, Olga. That's really helpful. Maybe we need to do a destination Portugal in the
Yeah,
future.
definitely. Graham, do you ever go to Portugal, or are you purely within Spain?
I'm afraid when I've got a plane because it's often in places I need to get to quickly. It's been to Faro, and it's a bit complicated by train.
Yeah,
So
I think that's the thing, isn't it? That once the direct train option opens, it will be so much easier for us here in the UK to get to Portugal. At the moment, it is a bit of a commitment.
Next, we've got a question from Nat, who says, Hi Graham, thanks for explaining a bit about the various train routes in Spain. I'm currently based in Valencia and looking to travel around the country a bit more. Afraid I'm not great on trains, I get queasy. Have you had experience using BlaBlaCar at all? I was thinking of using it to go to Madrid this weekend.
hello, and I haven't because I mainly get the train, and if I don't, I hire a car. However, I've heard very good things about it, so I would give it a go. Everyone, when it's a difficult place to get to, it's a very good thing to do. I was recently down near Alicante, and I had to get to a town inland where there was very difficult connections. So people were saying, try a blah car, and in the end, somebody gave me a lift. But I'd give it a go.
Can you tell us a bit about what a BlaBlaCar is? I've never even heard of it.
Okay, basically, you kind of book it up like an Uber, except that somebody else is driving that way and wants to share their car with you. So essentially, you will pay some of the petrol, and they will do the driving, or the other way around, depends. So that's the idea.
Oh, that's really interesting. That sounds like a very cool scheme to do. Um, our next question is for Anna. Um, oh, this is about sharing information, sharing a trip for a different themed event. So, Paul, maybe we can get in contact with you about that. Jordan says, Graham, were there any stories you were able to write or get in on time which you would have missed if you were on a plane?
Um, so many, so many. For instance, I've been caught with news desks ringing me up and saying, "What's this about? Can you write something now?" And for instance, one, I was just about to get on a train. I was actually moving out of the station, and they said, "Can you do something on this right now?" It was in the evening, coming up to deadline, and so if I'd been about to get on a plane, it would have been hopeless. Deadline miss and big problem. So, it's been great like that. And one of the main reasons I take the train.
Hmm. Yeah, it definitely helps that you can stay more connected. And I think that is a great um, advantage of traveling by train. You don't necessarily have to take time off work when traveling because you can carry on working while you go. if there's good Wi-Fi or signal.
Yeah, sometimes it can be patchy, let's be honest. Going
Hmm.
through tunnels, and I've lost so many calls doing that, like everyone, no doubt. But generally it's pretty good. You can still
Hmm.
work, still write, whatever.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more peaceful and spacious than a plane to be writing on anyway. That's my opinion. Let me find another question. Jamie says, when is the best time to book train tickets to get cheapest prices? Olga's said 3 months before, but if anyone else has any insight, that'd be great.
I would say as far in advance as you can. But if you're getting a train ticket from, say, Madrid to Barcelona, Madrid to Seville, not so necessary to book way in advance. But if you're coming from the UK, yes, possibly.
Something that we found, because obviously we used Interrail, which then kind of sets the cost, because your seat reservations are always a fixed price. So your total cost, you can kind of anticipate it, except we didn't anticipate that the seat reservations also sell out. So there was a particular journey that we wanted to do which we just couldn't do because we left it too late to book it. So even if you are using Interrail and doing your seat reservations knowing that the price isn't going to change whenever you book it, you still need to book it because otherwise you might not be able to get on that train because it's sold out.
Yeah, that's good to know. This isn't a question, but someone in the chat box has said that they will be traveling back to, Santander to Plymouth at the end of interrailing. So please reach out when you do and let us know how it goes. Because we'd love to share that. Because it's a long ferry journey, but I imagine you'd get to see some really amazing views when you're on there. Just trying to see if I can find some more questions. Anna, are there any that you've seen that I may have missed?
I'm scrolling through as well, but it feels like people are also answering each other's points, which is
Yes.
really nice and so helpful. So thanks for that. And one thing I wanted to add actually as an observation, when you're on the high-speed trains in Spain, you have to put your bags through the scanner. So it's security. You have to go through security. It's not obviously the same as an international border security, but yeah, that's something you might want to be prepared for as well. Because we've talked about how easy it is to just wander up to the train and get on it, but there is that extra layer on the Spanish high-speed trains that you have to. It doesn't take any time at all, but it's still something you have to do. So, coming up at being prepared to do that and allowing a few extra minutes for that is a really good idea.
That's great to know. Thank you, Anna. If anyone's got any more questions, please do put them in the chat. I don't think I've missed any, but if I have, just pop it in and I will make sure we answer it.
Well, we can wrap up if everyone's happy and if there are no more pressing questions anyway. So up to you, Matilda.
Yeah, I don't think there are. There's a lot of love for the double-decker trains though, which I definitely agree with.
Yeah. Actually, someone here has mentioned the Eurostar, and we have got quite a few tips for getting a cheaper Eurostar, given that we've highlighted that's often the most expensive part. So not only is booking it in advance a really good idea, you also have Eurostar Snap. So someone's just written that in the chat. That's a really good tip. And what that means is you select the day and the broad time you want to travel, and Eurostar will give you the cheapest seat or ticket for that's going that day. But you have to be flexible because they don't tell you what time your train is until the day before. So if you're able to be flexible and want to kind of take a bit of a chance on getting a cheaper ticket, then that's a good way to go. Also, there's the low fare finder on the Eurostar website. So prices start at £39, and most of them will go in furthest in advance. So if you're quick, you get that. But they do then release more £39 fares if you a bit later on. So if you check the low fare finder from time to time, it will show you which ones have now come up as the low £39 fares, or maybe a bit more, but still lower than some of the top fares. So yeah, if you are using Eurostar as your entrance to mainland Europe, then that's a good tip for getting keeping the cost down.
Robert's put here as well that they've found that the cheapest Eurostar tickets are late or early, so you may then have to pay to stay overnight in London or Paris, which is a good point. So it's worth considering whether it's worth it if it's late or early. But if you're getting something like a sleeper train from Paris, maybe that's ideal to keep the costs down. Jenny has asked a question. Where do you book the Paris to Spain overnight?
Go on, Nancy. That's the one you took, right?
Yeah, it wasn't. I think the question was asked earlier in the chat as well. It wasn't directly to Spain. I may not know, but there may be overnight trains that go all the way from Paris to Spain. The overnight train that I took was from Paris to Toulouse, and that is on SNCF Train de Nuit, I think, or SNCF Night Train. It is part of the SNCF main website. But that one, those seats get put up. I know there's some discussion around when's best to book them. I think the guideline that website gave me was 10 weeks in advance, 10 weeks, 8 to 10 weeks. So I just kept checking around the date that I thought they were going to come up. And then when they did, it miraculously appears. If you search sort of Paris to Toulouse and you're too early, then that train just won't be there, even though all the other sort of high-speed ones are. And then when it gets to the right time, it'll suddenly appear, the 10 o'clock train, and you'll be able to book it then. And then, yeah, obviously, if you're early, it'll be cheaper. And another good thing to note about the overnight train is that if you're a woman traveling by yourself, which I was, and I will be again this year, there's a button that you can tick that says I'm a woman traveling solo. They'll put you in a cabin with all other female solo travelers, just for sort of safety and peace of mind. And then, yeah, you have a female guard come around and check your tickets as well. So that's nice.
That's really good. Great for women feeling safe traveling. I know that can be a bit of a worry for some women, of course. Olga, were you going to reiterate that, or did you have something else?
Yeah, the French one is, a few people have put it in the chat now. There's no direct train to Spain, overnight train, but you can go as far as Perpignan on one side, and Marseille as well. So you get quite close to the Spanish border, and they're called intercities. They're really great. I mean, they give you little blanket to use, and edible toothpaste, and water, and eye mask, etc. So there's something that's slightly old-fashioned about it. It's like 1940s. There's a sort of romance to it. But yes, they take you as far as the border, intercity, and this summer, because more people are getting interested, I'm going with other people. I mean, my husband has come with me lots of times, but now another friend is coming, and we've got one of the night trains. And actually, for a little bit of supplement, you can have the couchette to yourself. So once you get to 3 or 4 people, then you can for an extra bit of money, it's just your couchette, which is a luxury that I hadn't had before. So yeah, you can find them. I think with the compensation thing, it occurs to me that sometimes when some of the trains there's different types of French tickets and Spanish tickets too, where you're more so you get compensation. You get more compensation or less compensation. So the standard tickets are pretty bad, but then you can pay a different price. So if you're anxious, you can pay just that little bit extra. If not, you just sort of take the chance. So yeah, they do go slowly, Robert, the overnight trains, which is partly why they are quite so quite why they're sort of quite relaxing, because they trundle away, and the Wi-Fi isn't as good, etc. And yeah, overnight also but the thing is, you're not paying for the hotel, which helps massively, and you're traveling while you're sleeping, which helps massively too in terms of speeding up the journey if you wish. So yeah, you couldn't get the overnight high speed because you'd be there. They're incredible. I think Anna, you said they're just incredibly fast. They're doing 200, 300, almost 300 miles an hour, or kilometers. So yeah, it just wouldn't. They go slowly in order to make it overnight, but there's a real sort of magic to it if you get used to the fact that you're sleeping in the same cabin with lots of other people. But I've had some really nice conversations with French and Spanish people part of the joy is some of the encounters that you make with people that you didn't know but get to know.
Yeah, I think that longer time does allow you to make more connections with people, which is really lovely. Um, I think that might be it for questions, unless
Yeah, and
anyone wants to do a really quick last
we've run
minute
out of
one. But
time anyway.
yeah,
So yeah, that feels like the right place to bring it to a close.
absolutely. Did you want to finish, Anna, or shall I?
Well, just to say, I kind of should have said this at the beginning, but just to say thanks for being at our event. We're Flight Free UK. We're a charity that encourages people to travel without flying, and we do that by giving climate information about travel and also travel inspiration. So that's what you've been here tonight to hear. So if you want to find out more about Flight Free UK, you can go to our website, which is flightfree.co.uk, or follow us on any of our social media at Flight Free UK. Probably just zoom up to the final slide actually because it's all written on that.
Of
So
course, yeah.
thanks, Matilda, and then you can just round off for us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. We've also got another event coming up next month, the Flight Free Travel Surgery. So if anyone has any more questions about traveling to Spain or other countries, we're going to have a few guest speakers to help with that. So that's on our website.
Including the man in seat 61, we should add.
Yes, absolute guru of traveling by land and sea. So yes, that's coming up. So a big thank you to all of our speakers this evening and for everyone coming along. You've all been amazing. And if Nancy's excited about the man in seat 61. Yeah, thank you so much for coming along. And if anyone didn't have any questions they wanted answered, please come along to our next event. And feel free to have a look at our website. We've got loads of lovely blog posts, some of which are done by people that spoke tonight. So if you want any more information, I would send you there.
Thanks so much, everyone. Good night.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you. Bye.
Take
Good
care.
night.